I'm going to tell this straight, the way it sits in my head, at 3 in the morning when the house is quiet and my skin feels too tight over my bones. My name is Henry Smith. I'm a blue-collar guy, concrete rebar, mud, diesel. That's my world. I don't write stories, and I sure as hell don't usually talk about monsters. But what I'm about to tell you, I wish it was just a story. This was in a northern Pennsylvania, outside a little town called Ridgway. We were doing site work for a small industrial facility out in the woods. Some private outfit that needed a flat pad, drainage, utilities, all that, cut right into the tree line. A lot of money tied up in it, a lot of pressure to finish before the fall rains. You know the sort of place, 2-lane highway, then a cracked secondary road, then a gravel access road that looks like it was made by somebody just dragging a bucket loader through the trees. Big pines on both sides, hills shouldering up against you, everything damp and shadowed even at noon. We had a crew of maybe 15 guys, rotating on and off, excavators, dump trucks, concrete trucks coming and going. I'd been with the company for years, so I ended up doing some of the odds and ends, running equipment, tying steel, and later on, when the budget got tight, pulling security shifts on the site at night. The client had equipment stolen on a previous project, copper, tools, even fuel. So they insisted someone be there pretty much 24/7 once we got into the later phases. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, just sit in your truck, cruise around the site with a flashlight every hour, scare off any idiot teenagers or scrap thieves, easy over time. That was the theory. The first weird thing was the tracks. This was late August, warm, humid, mosquitoes thick in the air. We'd just cut the pad and were starting to form up for the footers. I was walking the perimeter with a tape, checking distances off the corner stakes, when I saw what looked like dog tracks in the soft mud near the tree line. Not unusual, stray dogs, coyotes, you see stuff all the time around sites, except these were big. I'm talking my work boot size is 11. These prints were longer than that and wider. The claws had dug deep, leaving these sharp gouges like someone had pulled a garden rake through the mud. I remember standing there, frowning down at them, sweat trickling under my hard hat. I stuck my boot next to one print, just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. My heel barely hit the back of it. The toes of the print stretched past my own by an inch. Claw marks, another inch beyond that. "Hey, Hank, you measuring the ground now or what?" One of the guys, Ray, hollered from across the pad. I straightened up. "You seen this?" I called back, pointing. He trudged over, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. Short guy, barrel chest, beard full of dust. He looked down, then snorted. "Bear, man. They got black bears all over these hills." "Bear prints are wider," I said automatically. "More rounded." He gave me a look. "Look at David Attenborough over here. You a bear expert now?" I shrugged, but the back of my neck was prickling. "Just saying, I've seen bear sign. This looks wrong." He crouched and squinted. Could be a big dog, one of them mastiffs, or a wolf. "There aren't supposed to be wolves around here," I answered. Ray shrugged again, stood and stomped across the print like it was nothing. Whatever it ain't paying union dues. Let's go. Boss wants this line checked by lunch. So we moved on. It stuck in my head though. Couple days later, the second thing happened. We were wrapping up for the day when I heard someone call my name from the tree line. Henry. I turned. You know how sound travels weird in the woods? It felt like the voice came from everywhere at once. Yeah, I yelled back. Nothing. No movement, just dark green shadow and the smell of pine sap and wet earth. Somebody there? I called again. One of the laborers, Miguel, looked up from where he was rolling up extension cords. You say something, Henry? Thought someone called me, I said. He shook his head. Nobody said your name, man. Radio maybe? I checked. My radio was on my belt, turned down low. I pulled it out, listened. Just the occasional click of someone else talking on another channel, too far away to hear. I let it go. Probably one of the guys messing with me, I figured. You spent all day in the heat, your brain starts hearing things. That's what I told myself anyway. When they told me I'd be pulling nights, I didn't complain. The pay bump was nice. I figured I'd sit in my truck, sip gas station coffee, listen to late night talk radio, and stare at the trees. Easy money. First night was fine. Quiet, eerie, but fine. The site looked completely different under the work lights. We only left a few mast lights on, one by the equipment parking area, one by the rebar staging, and one near the half-framed utility building. Everything else was just black shapes and suggestions. The woods were a wall beyond the edge of the pad, the kind of black that eats your flashlight beam. Around midnight, I parked near the center of the site, killed the engine to save fuel, and just sat there, windows cracked, warm wind slipping in, the distant sound of crickets and something bigger moving through the brush now and then. You don't realize how much noise you live with until you're surrounded by almost nothing. Every creak of the truck frame, every pop from the cooling engine, every rasp of fabric seems deafening. About 2 in the morning, I got out for one of my walk-arounds. Big mag light in hand, I walked the perimeter, checked the tool container, the fuel tanks, the equipment, excavator, loader, rollers. Everything was still. The air smelled like damp concrete and diesel. I went all the way over to the far corner of the pad, where we'd left some rebar cages stacked near the tree line. My light brushed across the trees, picking out trunks, underbrush, and then eyes. 2 points of reflected light, like coins catching the beam. I froze. My finger tightened on the flashlight. The hairs on my arms stood up. Every part of my brain went dog, deer, raccoon, anything normal, anything but predator. But these weren't low to the ground. They were high, maybe 6-7 feet off the dirt, if they were what I thought they were. The eyes didn't blink. They didn't flinch away from the light. They just stared back at me, steady and focused. My throat was dry. Hey, I called. I don't know why. Habit, I guess. You're on private property. Yeah, I really said that. To eyes, in the dark. No reaction, just that unblinking stare. I told myself I was imagining the height. Maybe it was on a log, maybe the ground sloped up behind the brush. I took one step closer. The eyes rose, not back, not to the side, straight up, smooth, like whatever they belonged to, stood up from a crouch. You know that feeling when your stomach just drops out, like you missed a step in dark? That, all at once. The thing shifted, and for a split second, the light caught more than just eyes. Ragged, dark fur, a long muzzle, the hint of teeth. Then it moved. Not sideways, not away. It was like the darkness itself folded around it, and it just ceased to be where it had been. I heard a heavy thud deeper in the trees, and then the underbrush shaking. I stepped back, bringing the beam up and down, left and right, heartbeat pounding in my ears. Bear, I said out loud, because I needed to put a word to it. Big black bear, that's all. Bears stand up. Bears have eyes. Bears have dark fur. It didn't feel like a bear. I backed away, not turning my back to the trees until I hit the comfort of the gravel path and the glow of the nearest mast light. My skin felt too small for my body. That was night one. I didn't sleep when I got home. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying those eyes over and over. Next morning, I told Ray what I'd seen. He laughed, of course. "You're jumpy as hell, man. Night watch gets people. I heard a squirrel once and thought it was a burglar. It was tall," I insisted. "Too tall for a dog." "Moose?" he said. "You know there's moose out here sometimes." "I know what a moose looks like," he grinned. "Do you?" I let it go. There is only so many times you can say, "I know what I saw," before you start sounding like a crazy person. 2 days later, I was doing a midday walk across the site when I caught the smell. Rot, copper, wet fur. The wind was blowing from the trees toward the pad. I followed my nose and the faint trail of flies to the edge of the woods, just down from where I'd seen those eyes. That's where I found the deer, or what was left of it. It was a big buck, or had been. The antlers were still intact, proud and wide, but the rest of it looked like it had gone through an industrial shredder. The ribcage was open, exposed like bony fingers reaching up at the sky. Most of the guts were gone, but the way they'd been taken out, that's what made my stomach twist. It didn't look like the neat work of a hunter, or even the tearing mess of a bear. It looked intentional, like something had opened it up, pulled out what it wanted, and left the rest. The hind legs were almost torn off, hanging by strings of tissue. The head was twisted unnaturally, tongue lolling out, eyes clouded. I've seen roadkill. I've seen what coyotes and bears do. This was different. "Jesus," I muttered. I heard movement behind me and turned. It was Miguel, cigarette hanging from his lips, eyes widening as he saw over my shoulder. "Damn," he breathed, taking the smoke out of his mouth. "You see that? That's messed up, man." "Yeah," I said quietly. We both stood there for a minute, just listening to the flies buzzing. Bear? He asked. Maybe, I said. He frowned. Bears don't usually leave that much meat, do they? Seems like a waste. I didn't answer. Later, in the job trailer, one of the local operators, an older guy named Earl, overheard us talking about it. You said you found it torn up near the trees? He asked, half pretending not to care, while he digested his chili from a thermos. Yeah, I said. Looked like something had eaten half of it and just left the rest. Earl snorted. You boys got something big in them woods. That's for damn sure. Bear? Ray chimed in. Earl shook his head slowly. Maybe, but I seen bear kills. This ain't sound like no bear. What else would it be? I asked, more defensive than I meant to sound. Earl considered me for a long moment. Sometimes you get a rogue, something sick, something not right in the head. Wolves, coyotes. I seen a big dog pack once tore up 3 calves and didn't eat but one. Killed just to kill. I don't like that kind of thing. You got wolves around here? I pressed. Supposedly not, he said. State says there ain't any. Hunters say different. Some folks say other things. Ray groaned. Here we go. Earl popped the lid back onto his thermos. Big woods out here, he went on. Lot of things can live where nobody ever goes. My granddad used to talk about seeing, well, you don't want to hear old stories. Yes, I do, I said, a little too fast. Earl gave me a look I still think about. It was the look of a man trying to decide how much to say to someone who hasn't yet seen what he's seen. Just keep your eyes open on them night shifts, he finally said, and don't go walking into the trees. Whatever's out there knows the dark better than you do. If this was a movie, this is where the camera would pan up to a calendar on the wall with a big red circle around the date. In real life, you don't notice that stuff until later. All I knew at the time was that nights were getting lighter. The moon was fat and bright, throwing pale light across the side, even with the mast lights off. It was my third night on in a row. I was tired, jittery from too much coffee and too little sleep. The air had that cool snap to it that tells you fall is coming. Around 11, I was sitting in my truck, listening to some conspiracy nut on the AM band talk about government weather machines, when I heard it. A howl. Not a coyote yip, not a dog bark. A long rising sound that seemed to slide under the skin and hook itself into my nerves. It started low, then peaked in a sharp, almost human-sounding note before dropping off, leaving the night feeling wrong. The radio host kept talking about HARP and chemtrails like nothing had happened, but the back of my neck was crawling. I killed the radio, leaned forward, listened. The howl came again, closer this time. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. We're near woods. Wolves used to live here. Coyotes vocalize. There is always a simple answer. But I'd spent my whole life around dogs and coyotes. This was heavier, thicker. There was power in it. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out of the truck. Henry, you're an idiot. I muttered to myself as my boots hit the gravel. I walked past the fuel tanks, past the tool container, past the half-built shell of the utility building. The mast light hummed above me, throwing hard white light over the pad and leaving the tree line in deeper shadow. The howl came a third time, and this one was so close it vibrated in my chest. It sounded like it was just beyond the trees. I stopped at the edge of the pad. The ground dropped off toward the forest, a mix of churned mud and rocks and leftover brush. My flashlight beam cut across the first few feet between trunks, then was swallowed by night. "Hey!" I shouted before I could stop myself. "Get the hell out of here." Brilliant, yelling at the dark. Real professional. The woods went quiet. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. Then, a crack. The sound of something big stepping on a branch. Heavy footfalls, not the skitter of a small animal. "Bear," I whispered, because I wanted it to be. The shape that stepped into the edge of my light wasn't a bear. At first, it was just a suggestion of bulk, a darker dark among shadows. Then my beam hit fur, dark, shaggy, matted in places. The light traced up over a broad chest, shoulders that were too narrow and high for a bear, arms, actual arms, ending in hands with long curved claws that caught the light. The head tilted and the muzzle came into view, long and wolf-like, nose shining wet. The ears were pointed, twitching, the mouth opened slightly, and I saw teeth that were too long and too many. Its eyes burned with a pale yellow reflection in my beam. It was standing on two legs. My brain refused to process it for a second. It was like looking at one of those optical illusions, pictures where your mind keeps trying to turn it into something familiar but can't. It wasn't fully upright like a man either. It was hunched, knees bent forward like a dog's, huge thighs and calves corded with muscle. The arms hung low, close, almost touching its knees. It exhaled, a sound that was half growl, half something else. The scent hit me a heartbeat later. Wet dog, coppery blood, and something musky and hot, like a wild animal in a small cage. Every part of my body screamed, "Run," but my legs locked. For a stupid second, the only thought in my head was, "That's not possible." We just stared at each other. My light shook slightly, dancing over its fur, catching on the teeth. It took one step forward. You know how dogs move, bouncing and quick? This wasn't that. It was smooth, controlled, predatory. The weight shifted from one foot to the other in a way that said it knew exactly how strong it was. My mouth finally caught up. "Stop," I yelled, voice cracking. "I have a gun." I didn't. My pistol was in my glove compartment, which might as well have been in Brazil at that moment. The thing cocked its head when I said gun, and I swear to you, it smiled. Not lips pulling back in an animal grimace, not a snarl, a curl at the corners of the mouth that said it understood the word and knew how useless it was. My hand dropped from the beam to my belt without me thinking. My fingers closed around the little cross I wore on a chain. My mom gave me that cross when I turned 18. Sterling silver. I never take it off. Never thought much about it beyond sentiment. The second my fingers crossed around it, the thing flinched. It wasn't big, just twitch, like a dog hearing a whistle. The eyes narrowed, the lips pulling back just a fraction to show more teeth. Maybe it smelled the metal. Maybe the movement just startled it. I don't know. But that tiny reaction snapped me out of my paralysis. I took one slow step back, then another. Easy, I breathed. God knows why. Like I was talking to some vicious stray. Easy, big guy. He took another step toward me, closing the distance I'd gained. Its claws dragged lightly in the dirt with a sound like someone scratching a chalkboard under a blanket. Suddenly, it broke eye contact, head turning sharply to the left. My truck. It looked at my truck. We stood on a triangle of light between creature, truck, and me, and I saw it decide something in that moment. Then it moved. 1 second, it was 10, 15 yards away. Next second, it was almost on me, a blur of fur and teeth and claws. It covered the distance like it was nothing. I only survived because I'd already started to turn. I ran. I don't remember deciding to. My body just acted. I sprinted toward the masked light, boots slipping in the gravel, heart hammering in my chest so loud it hurt. Behind me, I heard claws on rock, breath like a bellows. It roared then, not howled. The sound hit me in the back like a physical force, deep, enraged, furious. I dove the last few feet, slammed into the side of my truck so hard my shoulder popped. I clawed at the handle, yanked the door open and flung myself inside. The creature hit the truck a split second later. The entire cab shuddered. The driver's side door buckled inward as something massive slammed into it. The window exploded inward in a shower of safety glass, shards cutting my face and hands. A clawed arm came through the opening, scrambling for purchase, ripping the rubber lining. One of the claws caught the sleeve of my jacket and tore it like tissue. The smell of it was everywhere. Wet fur, rot, hot breath. It snarled, trying to get leverage. The metal shrieked. Adrenaline does weird things. While it was trying to tear the door open, my hand found the keys. I don't even remember pulling them from my pocket, but suddenly they were in the ignition. I twisted. The engine roared to life. I slammed the truck into reverse, foot hitting the gas like I meant to put it through the floor. The truck lurched backward, tires spitting gravel. The creature lost its footing and its arm was dragged back out of the window. I heard it snarl, not in pain, more in surprise. I didn't look back. I swung the wheel, skidding in a half circle, and floored it toward the access road. In the rear view, for a heartbeat, I caught sight of it in the mast light, tall, hunched, fur rippling, watching me go. Its eyes glowed. It didn't chase. It didn't have to. It knew something I didn't yet, that this wasn't over. I made it all the way back to town before I had to pull over. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't keep the truck in the lane. I parked at some closed gas station, leaned forward and just panted, staring at my own white-knuckled grip on the wheel. The inside of the cab looked like a crime scene. Glass everywhere, scratches gouged deep into the outside of the door, curling in parallel lines. One claw had punched right through the metal, leaving a neat hole edged with peeled steel. My sleeve was ripped up to the shoulder, but my skin underneath was unbroken. I'd gotten lucky. Or it had let me go. It took me a long time to call my boss. He answered groggy. "Yeah, Steve," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. Something hit my truck on sight. Big animal. Smashed the window, tore up the door. "I'm going home. I'll come in and show you in the morning." Silence. Then, "You okay?" "I think so," I said. Just shook up. "Bears," he muttered. "Knew we should have put in for a damn fence earlier." "Alright, go home. We'll sort it out tomorrow." I almost told him. I almost said it wasn't a bear, but the words caught behind my teeth. What was I supposed to say? A 7-foot wolf man tried to rip my door off? I drove home. I showered for a long time, scrubbing at the smell that seemed to cling to me even after 3 passes with soap. My neck hurt. My shoulder felt like it had taken a hit from a linebacker. When I closed my eyes, I saw those eyes staring back. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay there, listened to the fridge hum and the clock tick, and some stray dog bark a few stretches over, and waited for dawn. At the site the next day, my story went about how you'd expect. "Jesus, man," Ray said, running his hand along the claw marks on the truck door. "That was one pissed off bear." "It wasn't a bear," I said quietly. He grinned. "Oh right, I forgot. Our resident wildlife expert. So what was it then, Hank? Bigfoot?" I stared at the gouges, 4 neat lines about the width of my fingers from each other, curved slightly, deep enough to have cut through the outer skin of the door and into the structure. "Claws don't do this," I muttered. "Not bear claws. They dent the whole thing." "Maybe it was using a knife," Ray shot back. "Big bear, big knife." I didn't laugh. Steve was more practical. "Insurance will cover it," he said, rubbing at his thinning hair. "We got the night watch on record. We'll file it as a wildlife damage. In the meantime, you're not staying out here alone at night anymore. We'll get a rental security crew." I should have felt relieved. I didn't. I felt singled out, like the thing out there was listening somehow, hearing us talk about it, hearing them decide to take me off nights. Part of me wanted to never go back. Another part, the stubborn, stupid part, wanted to stand on that path in full daylight and prove myself that it had all been some kind of waking nightmare. Blue-collar guys don't get to just walk off jobs because something spooked them. We grit our teeth and keep going. That's what I did. They hired a security company, like Steve said. 2 guys in a beat-up SUV took turns sitting at the gate overnight. I went back to day shifts. For a little while, nothing happened. I tried to convince myself I'd overreacted. Hell, maybe it had been a bear. Maybe my brain had filled in the gaps wrong in the dark. Trauma does weird stuff. Then the weather changed. September in those hills can flip from summer to cold damp fall overnight. The air gets heavier. You smell rain before it comes. We had a week of steady drizzle. The pad turned to soup. We lost time, rescheduling pours. Equipment got bogged down. Everyone was on edge, trying to make up for lost days. One grey afternoon, I was down near the tree line, checking some stakes that had shifted in the soft ground. The rain had let up to a mist, tiny droplets hanging in the air. That's when I smelled it again, wet fur, rot, that hot wild animal scent. It cut through the damp earth and diesel like a knife. I froze. Every sense suddenly turned up to 11. The hair on my arms rose. My fingers tightened on the stake I was adjusting. Slowly, I straightened, turned toward the trees. They were just trees. Dark trunks, dripping branches, murky shadow underneath. No movement, no eyes. But it was there, watching. I felt it the way you feel someone staring at the back of your head in a crowded room. "Henry, you good?" Miguel called from up the slope. I swallowed. "Yeah, just thought I heard something." "You and your damn animals, man," he said, shaking his head. "Come on, we need to get those forms braced before the truck comes." I forced myself to go up the hill. I didn't look back, but the smell followed me all the way to the top. That night, one of the security guys quit. We found out the next day. His partner showed up alone, eyes red, hands trembling slightly, as he poured coffee from the side thermos. "What happened to your buddy?" Ray asked, only halfway joking. "He get eaten by your bear?" The guard guy, in his 30s, buzz cut, name tag said M. Rogers, shook his head. "He didn't tell you?" "Tell us what?" I asked. Rogers sighed. "He said something was circling the SUV all night, scratching the back bumper. He got out once to check and heard something move in the woods. Big. He says he saw eyes." The room seemed to shrink. "What kind of eyes?" I asked carefully. Rogers shrugged one shoulder. "Glowing. Up high. He said he got spooked and sat in the truck with the high beams on until morning. When he got off shift, he went in, grabbed his check and told the boss he'd rather flip burgers than sit out here one more night. Handed in his gun and everything." Ray snorted, but it sounded forced. "Damn, guess your bear's got a fan club." Rogers looked at me over the rim of his cup. His eyes were serious. "You ever get that feeling out here? Like something's watching from the trees?" I held his gaze. "Yeah," I said, "I have." 2 days after that, Earl cornered me by the fuel tanks during lunch. "You ever hear of the werewolf of Johnson Run?" he asked, as casually as if he was asking whether I'd caught the game last night. I blinked. "The what?" He nodded toward the woods. "Way back when, I'm talking before I was born, there were stories about something that walked those hills. Some folks called it a wolfman. Some said it was a cursed guy from town. Some just said it was a devil dog. But the way that they described it," he jerked his chin toward the claw marks still visible on my truck door, "sounds a lot like what you got into it last month." I laughed, but it came out thin. "Werewolves, Earl? Really?" He shrugged. "Call it what you want. Big wolf that walks on 2 legs, only shows up around the full moon.
kills livestock sometimes. Hunters go missing once in a while. Old folks say you can stop it with silver or a good shotgun if you're close enough and lucky. I snorted. That's just movie stuff. Movies get their stories from somewhere, kid, he said quietly. Every culture's got some version of it. Man turns into wolf when the moon's full, goes out hunting. Sometimes he remembers it, sometimes he doesn't. Usually ends bad, either way. I shifted, uncomfortable. So what? You think some guy out there put on a fursuit and attacked my truck? Earl shrugged. I think this is big country, and we don't know half of what lives in it. I also think you look like you've seen something that ain't on any hunting license. He wasn't wrong. You saying silver stops it? I asked, trying to downplay the tremor in my voice. That's what my granddad said his dad told him. Earl replied. Shoot it with silver, stab it with silver, whatever. Maybe it's just a story. But if I was going back out there at night, I'd want something more than just a flashlight and my lunchbox. He walked away after that, leaving with the smell of diesel and the weight of that word echoing in my head. Werewolf. I wanted to laugh it off. I also found myself at the pawn shop that afternoon, turning a little silver crucifix over in my hands. Your lady religious? The old man behind the counter asked. It's for me, I said. I already had my old cross. This one was bigger, heavier. I slid it into my pocket, along with the silver ring I used to wear, but had stopped years back. Felt stupid, felt like a kid, arming himself with a wooden sword. But I kept them on me. We were behind schedule. The weather wouldn't cooperate. The trucks were late and the client was breathing down Steve's neck. That's how I ended up staying late on site again, even after everything that had happened. We just need to get that last footing poured, Steve said, lines deep around his eyes. The truck's already on the way. If it sets up wrong overnight, we're screwed. Just hang around and make sure they get it in and the forms don't blow out. Security will be here at 10. You'll be out of there by 11. Midnight at the latest. He looked at me like he knew I had reasons to say no, but also like he didn't have anyone else he trusted to babysit a late pour. I looked at the tree line, then at him, then at the overtime calculator in my head that had been keeping my bills paid. Fine, I said, but if your werewolf chews on me again, I'm billing hazard pay. He didn't laugh. The truck was late, of course. By the time we got the concrete down and vibrated and troweled, it was nearly 11. The rest of the crew peeled off one by one, headlights disappearing down the access road. Security was even later. The guy texted Steve that he'd had a flat, was waiting on a tow. Steve texted me, hang tight, he'll be there as soon as he can. Lock the gate when you leave. The sky was clear, the moon was fat and bright, silvering the wet concrete and turning the mist over the low ground into glowing sheets. I did one last walk, checked the forms, made sure nothing was sagging or bulging. Everything looked good. The site was quiet, too quiet. No crickets, no night birds, just the distant whisper of wind through the pine and the occasional drip of water. The air felt charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm, when all your hair stands on end. I should have left. I know that hindsight is loud. Instead, I wandered toward the rebar stacks, flashlight swinging lazily in my hand. I told myself I was just doing one more check before locking the gate. The smell hit me first. Not just wet fur this time, blood, fresh and metallic, thick enough to taste. My throat closed. I turned slowly toward the tree line. The deer carcass from before had been bad. This was worse. It was one of those stray dogs we'd seen around the road, a mutt that had been hanging near the site, begging for scraps. Someone had called him Buddy. Hell, I thrown him a sandwich once. Now Buddy was spread across the brush like a butcher's display gone wrong. His front half was dangling from a low branch, ribs cracked open like the deer's. His back half was on the ground, rear legs twisted, tail chewed off. His insides were mostly gone, but there was more blood than you'd expect, sprayed across the leaves, pooled on the rocks. For a second, I just stared. My brain could not handle one more awful thing. Then the growl started. Low, so low at first I thought it was the rumble of a truck in the distance. Then it rose, vibration crawling up my legs through the ground, humming in my teeth. It was behind me. I turned slowly, flashlight dragging through the dark. It was closer than it had ever been, 10 yards away, maybe less, standing half in shadow, half in the cold spill of moonlight. This time, there was no mistaking what I was seeing. 7, maybe 8 feet tall, hunched, dark gray fur, almost black along its spine, patchy in places where old scars cut through. Arms as big as my thighs, hands, not paws, hands, with long curved claws that flexed and curled into the dirt. The chest rose and fell heavy, muscles shifting under the fur like coiled ropes. The head was pure nightmare, long wolf muzzle, lips pulled back over wet, yellowed fangs, ears pricked and alert, eyes like burning coals, fixed right onto me. It stepped forward, and I saw that the legs were all wrong. Digitigrade, bent like a dog's but thicker, more powerful. The feet were massive, splayed claws digging into the mud. It was a werewolf. There's no other word that fits. All that movie stuff Earl had mentioned, they'd gotten it right. Full moon, wolfman, predatory hunger in its eyes. I did the only thing I could think of. My hand flew to the cross around my neck. I yanked it out, held it up like an idiot, like some priest in a B-movie. "Stay back," I shouted, voice cracking. "In the name of..." The thing flinched. This time I saw it clearly. Its lip curled further, a real snarl, and it hesitated. I felt the chain dig into my palm. The cross was warm from my skin. "Silver." "Yeah," I whispered, something savage flaring in me. "You don't like that, do you, you son of a bitch?" I took a step toward it, cross held up. My flashlight swung wild, beam cutting across its chest, its claws, its face. It growled louder, a rolling thunder of sound. Then it started circling, not backing up, not retreating, circling, like a wolf around a fire, looking for a gap. I turned with it, keeping the cross between us. My heart hammered hard enough I thought it might burst. My knees wanted to buckle. But some stupid, stubborn part of me was furious that this thing had torn up our sight, killed a dog, nearly killed me, and was now just toying with me. "You want me?" I heard myself saying, voice shaking. "Come on then." It stopped, tilted its head, eyes narrowing. Its nostrils flared. It inhaled deeply, tasting the air. I realized then that I was standing right next to the rebar stack, length of number 6 bar, 20 feet long, tied in bundles. A few loose pieces leaned against the stack, ends sticking out. Without taking my eyes off the werewolf, I reached back slowly and wrapped my fingers around one bar. Cold metal, familiar weight. I shifted my grip, hands spread, bar angled like a spear. The werewolf's gaze tracked the movement. It understood. It knew what a weapon was. We stood there in the moonlight, man and monster, each weighing the other. Then it lunged. Movies slow everything down in big fights. Real life speeds up. 1 second it was 10 yards away. Next second it was in my face. A blur of fur and teeth and muscle. It hit me like a car, claws slashing. Instinct and panic saved me. I threw myself sideways, drove the rebar forward as hard as I could. The bar hit something solid. There was a wet, crunching sound, and the werewolf roared in a way that was pure, unfiltered pain. It kept coming. The impact knocked me off my feet. I went down hard, my back slamming into the mud. The rebar was torn from my hands as the thing spun away, dragging it. For a split second, I saw it clearly. The rebar had gone in under its ribs on the left side and out its back, skewering it like some grotesque kebab. Dark blood ran down the steel, thick and almost black in the moonlight. It dropped to all fours for a second, panting, then howled. The sound was... I don't have words for it. It was pain and fury, and something like betrayal, all rolled into one. Every hair on my body stood up. My ears rang. I tasted blood. My own. I'd bitten my tongue. It should have died. No normal animal takes a blow like that and stays standing. This wasn't a normal animal. It grabbed the rebar with one clawed hand and pulled. You ever see someone yank a splinter out of their finger? Same motion, just bigger, wetter, so much worse. The bar slid out with a horrible sucking sound. More blood poured out. The werewolf staggered, then straightened, chest heaving. Its eyes found me again. I scrambled backward in the mud, palms slipping, boots digging for perches. My shoulder screamed pain. I'd landed on it wrong, but adrenaline shoved it aside. It stalked toward me, one hand pressed to its side, claws slick with its own blood. Its gaze was different now, not amused, not curious, just murder. My fingers brushed against something in the muck, cold metal, a dropped wire tie tool, small pliers, pointless. Next to it, still in its plastic sheet, a concrete form stake, one of the ones we'd ground to a point to drive into hard ground. I grabbed it. The stake was steel, not silver, but it was sharp. I yanked the sheet off with my teeth, spat plastic and got my feet under me just as the werewolf lunged again. Its weight hit me, driving me backward. Claws raked across my chest. I felt fabric tear, heat, then cold, as air hit open skin. I screamed, more in shock than pain. It went for my throat. Time did that weird stretching thing then. I saw its jaws opening, the strings of saliva, the blackness inside. I smelled its breath, meat and rot, and something like old pennies. I brought the stake up. The steel point went into the werewolf's neck, just under the jaw, and angled up. There was this awful popping resistance, then a give, and the tip punched out just below its ear. The werewolf made a sound I never want to hear again. A strangled, choked gurgle. Its jaws clamped shut inches from my face, teeth snapping. Hot blood sprayed over me, pumping from the wound in jets. It was warmer than I expected, thicker. It thrashed, claws tearing at my sides, my arms. One claw raked along my shoulder, ripping through the skin to white, hot bone. I screamed again, voice ragged. My hand, the one still clutching the silver cross, ended up pressed against its chest in the struggle. The cross dug into its fur, into the skin beneath. Where the silver touched, there was a hiss. Smoke, actual smoke, rose between my fingers and its flesh. The smell of burning hair and meat hit my nose a second later. The werewolf jerked back like it had been shocked. Its claws spasmed, digging deep once, then tearing away. It staggered off me, hands flying to its chest and neck. It ripped the stake out with a wet tearing sound and stumbled backward, leaving a dark trail. I rolled, gasping, clutching my shredded shoulder. The world went in and out of focus. It howled again, weaker this time, then turned and half ran, half stumbled toward the trees. Its gait was lopsided, one leg dragging slightly. I watched it crash into the underbrush and disappear. Then everything went black. I woke up in the hospital. Fluorescent lights, antiseptic, the rhythmic beep of some machine nearby. My shoulder felt like someone had poured molten metal into it and let it cool. My chest was bandaged. My throat was raw, like I had been screaming. A nurse noticed me moving and called for a doctor. There were questions, lots of questions. I told them I'd been attacked by a wild animal on site. They asked what kind. I said I didn't know. Big, furry, maybe a bear, maybe a big dog. They didn't press too hard. The claw marks spoke for themselves. Whatever it was had come close to shredding my shoulder. I was lucky, they said. A little deeper and it would have severed the joints. Steve came to see me later. He looked 10 years older. "You almost died out there, man," he said, voice quiet. "They found you unconscious in a puddle of blood. Security got there. Your truck was at the gate, but you weren't in it. They went looking." "Did they see?" I croaked. He shook his head. "They didn't see anything. Just a lot of blood, torn up ground, some kind of animal tracks. The cops went out in the morning with fish and game. They said whatever it was, it's gone now. Probably holed up somewhere nursing its wounds. If it's still alive." It was still alive. I knew it. Deep down in the bone, I knew. They are shutting the site down nights, Steve went on. For real this time. We'll have guys work only in the daylight until we get fences up, lights all the way around. I'm sorry, Henry. I shouldn't have asked you to stay. It would have come anyway, I said without really thinking. He frowned. What? Nothing, I muttered. The cops came, Fish and Game came. They all asked the same questions. I stuck to my story. Big animal, attack, panic, blackout. They asked if I'd been drinking. I said no. They asked about drugs. I laughed, then winced at the pain. Nobody mentioned werewolves. They did show me pictures. Tracks in the mud, huge deep prints. Almost like a wolf's but more elongated, more human at the heel. They said maybe it was an injured bear with a deformed paw. They showed me a tuft of fur they'd found snagged on a stake. Dark, coarse, thicker than any dogs I'd seen. Lab results would take time, they said. They didn't show me pictures of the blood spatter around the rebar stack. I saw some on their phone screens though. It was everywhere, heavier than any human bleeding would be, and still somehow not enough to feel satisfying. I stayed in the hospital 3 days. They stitched me up, pumped me full of antibiotics, watched for infection. The claw marks along my shoulder and ribs were deep but clean, no broken bones. Ray visited once, made some forced jokes, left a bag of chips on the tray. Miguel stopped by, crossed himself when he saw the bandages. Earl says you stuck a steel bar through the devil's himself, he whispered. That true? I look at my hands. They'd cleaned the blood off, but I swear I could still see it in the lines of my palms. I stuck something, I said. I went home eventually. Doctor's orders said no heavy lifting for a while, which in my line of work is like telling a chef not to touch knives. The company gave me some light duties in the office, mostly because they were worried I'd sue if they didn't. I sat at a desk, entering timesheets, staring at a computer screen, feeling like a stranger in my own life. At night, things got weird. First it was the dreams. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, the taste of blood in my mouth. I'd dream of running through the woods on all fours, wind in my fur, scents blazing like fireworks in my nose. Sometimes I'd be chasing something, sometimes I'd be chased. I'd smell things in those dreams: fear, urine, sweat, metal, with a clarity I've never had awake. It was intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. Then my senses started to change when I was awake. I could smell what my neighbors were cooking 3 houses down. I could hear conversations through closed doors. I started noticing sounds I'd never paid attention to before. The tick of cooling pipes, the hum of transformers, the tiny skitter of bugs in the walls. The first time I caught myself sniffing the air like a dog, I stopped dead in the middle of my living room and just stood there, shaking. I went back to the doctor. They checked my stitches, my blood pressure, my reflexes. Everything looked fine, they said. Trauma, painkillers, stress, all of that can cause weird dreams, heightened anxiety. They offered me sleeping pills. I took the prescription, never filled it. One night, about a month after the attack, I woke up with this pressure in my bones, like they were too big for my skin. My joints ached. Every muscle felt like it had been pulled. My shoulder scars burned. I stumbled to the bathroom, fumbled the light on. My reflection looked back at me, pale and wild-eyed. But what made my stomach drop was my teeth. My canines looked longer, sharper, not dramatically, not like movie fangs, but enough that when I ran my tongue over them, I felt the difference. I laughed. I actually laughed. Then I leaned my forehead against the mirror and stayed like that for a long time. "I'm going crazy," I whispered. "That's all. Just losing it. That's better than the alternative." Because the alternative was that the old stories were right. Get bitten by the wolf man, you turn into one. Cursed, infected. Whatever word you want to use, it meant the same thing. The next full moon after the attack, I didn't go to work. I told Steve I was sick. He didn't argue. I closed all my curtains, turned off every light, sat on my couch with a beer in my hand and a shotgun across my lap, like some paranoid lunatic. The cross my mom gave me was around my neck. The bigger pawn shop one was in my pocket, heavy against my thigh. I'd cleaned it obsessively until it shone. Outside, the moon rose, invisible behind clouds. I didn't need to see it to feel it. It was like a pressure building in my skull, behind my eyes, a static buzz under my skin. My scars itched, my bones ached. Around midnight, I heard a dog howling somewhere in the neighborhood. Not too close, but close enough that it cut into me like a blade. I got up, pacing. My feet wanted to move, to run. Every part of me screamed to get out, to find open sky. I gripped the shotgun harder. My hands shook. At some point, I ended up on the floor, huddled against the couch, rocking slightly, breathing through clenched teeth. I don't remember lying down, but I woke up like that, stiff and sore, with the first grey light of dawn creeping under the curtains. I checked myself in the mirror. No fur, no snout, no claws. My teeth were still just teeth, maybe a little too sharp in places, but still mine. I laughed again. It sounded hysterical, even to my own ears. "See?" I told my reflection. "You're fine. You're just screwed up from stress. You are..." I stopped. There, just under my collarbone, around the topmost claw scar, the skin was darker. Not bruised, not red. Dark, like something was moving under it. When I touched it, a shock went through me, like static electricity, but deeper. I pulled my hand back and stared at my palm. Nothing there, no marks. The reflection in the mirror stared back, eyes a little too bright. You're probably wondering why I'm laying all this on you. You're just someone I know, or someone I met, or hell, maybe you're just reading this secondhand because someone found what I wrote and thought it was a good scare. I'm telling you because I need someone to know. I need someone to understand that when you work out in the middle of nowhere, when you cut paths into deep woods and leave lights burning where it was dark for 100 years, you wake things up. Call it werewolf, call it skinwalker, call it a freak mutation. I don't care. Something old and dangerous was living in those trees, and we crossed its path. I survived. Barely. I don't know What happened to the one I stabbed? Maybe it crawled off to die. Maybe it healed. Maybe there is a man in town somewhere with a scar under his ribs and another on his neck who doesn't remember how he got them. Maybe there's a pack. Maybe Earl's old stories about other attacks weren't just stories. What I do know is this. Sometimes, when I'm out in the yard at night, taking the trash to the curb or just standing there smoking and pretending I don't do that anymore, I smell it. Wet fur, copper, pine sap. I turn my head and stare into the shadows between the houses or the little patch of woods behind the end of the street. I don't see anything, but I feel it, watching, waiting. I don't work nights anymore, won't go on remote sites without people around. I quit that company after a while and took a job at a warehouse in town. Less pay, less sky, more lights. People say I'm jumpy now, that I flinch at loud noises, that I scan the tree line a little too often on camping trips. They don't see me catch scents nobody else smells. They don't see how I can tell when a storm's coming without checking my phone. They don't know that sometimes I wake up with dirt under my nails and no memory of how it got there. I keep silver on me at all times. Necklace, ring, even a little silver coin in my wallet, rubbed smooth from my thumb. Maybe it's a placebo. Maybe it's the only thing between me and whatever is gnawing at the edges of my mind. If you work in the woods, loggers, linemen, side guys like me, pay attention. If you find kills that don't make sense, report them. If your dog starts refusing to go near the tree line, listen. If you hear howls that make your bones vibrate on a clear night when the moon's too bright, don't go looking for the sources. Lock your doors, bring your people inside. And if you are ever out on a job site near Ridgway, Pennsylvania, or any of the thousands of places like it, and you're alone, and the crickets go quiet all at once, and the air suddenly smells like wet dog and pennies and hot bread, don't stand there in the open like I did. Get in the truck, drive, don't look back. Because sometimes the stories aren't just stories. Sometimes the old men are right. Sometimes there are things out there that walk on two legs when the moon is full and look at you like you're not a person in a hard hat, but meat on legs, trespassing in their hunting ground. And if one of those things bites you or rakes its claws across your skin, and you manage to get away, pray that all you bring back home with you is scars, because I don't know what's waiting for me when the moon gets full enough and that pressure in my bones finally becomes too much. I don't know if I'll end up on all fours in some dark patch of woods, nose full of blood, hearing someone call my name from the edge of the tree line. I don't know if, when that time comes, I will remember enough of being Henry Smith to stop myself. All I know is that something looked at me out there under that cold moon and saw itself. And now, when I catch my reflection just right in the window at night, sometimes I don't recognize the eyes looking back. They're a little too bright, a little too hungry, and they remember the taste of fear.